Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 621. Releasing August 2nd in select theaters across the US and on video on demand is Detained, a psychological thriller that stars Abbie Cornish as Rebecca, a woman who wakes up in a police interrogation room with no memory of the night before. When she suspects a sinister plot is at play, Rebecca must uncover the truth before it is too late. Also starring Laz Alonso and Moon Bloodgood. Detained is a tightly wound crime mystery that will have you guessing until its final moments. And joining me now is the director and co-writer of Detained, Felipe Mucci. Felipe, how are you today?
Very well, Matt. Thank you for inviting me to be here. Looking forward to talking about the film.
Me too. And from what I understand of Detained, this is something like I think you were doing prep back in what 2020 or so. I remember reading a article about that. Um, I gotta tell you, I gotta ask, when did the idea for this movie kind of come from? You got like you got the unique setting, you got unique kind of like murder mystery here. How did you kind of come up with the idea for the movie?
So the project started with Ryan Scaringe and Jeremy Palmer. Ryan is the producer, and Jeremy is the other writer. Jeremy wrote the script to be this one location, and they were looking for directors and someone to do a couple changes to the script, make it a little more fast paced, a little more tense, up a little bit the thriller side of it. And so Ryan and I, we both went to the American Film Institute. So the teachers, when Ryan approached AFI asking for a director, one of the teachers there suggested my name. So that's how I got into the project. And then when I read the script, I thought it was really well written, had a lot of potential. I think what Jeremy and I then worked for about 6 months really was into making it really tight, because you have those moments where in the story where you calm down and relax a little bit, but you can't have too many of those. It has to be fast paced. It has to keep going. We're in just one location. I don't want the audience to, be able to look at their phones or, I wanted to make them engage throughout. So yeah, I was approached in beginning of 2020 and we shot in, I think, 2022. Yeah.
When I watched the film, it kind of something I pick up on is inspiration by kind of like 90s movies. There's a certain psychological thriller aspect of that decade, especially the way that some movies are paced, the way that the stories can unfold, kind of definitely reminded me of that decade of film. I don't want to mention which films because I don't want to give away, because if I do, I have a feeling that I could give away stuff, and I don't want
Sure.
to do that. But would the 90s, maybe early 2000s, psychological thriller crime mystery movies of that time, would that be an influence for yourself and Jeremy when approaching the kind of like the tone and the pace and the tightly wound kind of sequencing of the movie? Is that something that I got my got correct in my assumptions?
Well, 100%. I think in films nowadays they tend not to really explore that side, And I think in the 90s, absolutely, when even in the late 80s, we had films that would take the audience on this journey and twists and turns, and sometimes things are not what they look like, but then they change it again. And absolutely, that was a decade that of films that inspired us.
Can I ask in regards to casting? Abbie Cornish plays the main role, Rebecca. Abbie Cornish, as you could tell by my accent, I'm Australian. Abbie Cornish is one of Australia's great actors. She's terrific in the role because it's a role that really demands kind of like a sensitivity, demands, but also kind of like a really kind of um, uh, strength to it as well, to be able to kind of like stand up, not only like physical strength but psychological strength, especially. There's a lot of mind games going on in the movie. What was it like getting Abbie on board to take on this role of Rebecca in the movie? What was it like working with her?
Honest, Abby and I, after the film, I had such a great experience working with her. We became close friends. We go see movies now because she also loves film. So we go, and I think you kind of got it exactly why Abby was my first choice, was because she's able to be strong, and you can see that if needed, she could kick someone's ass. But at the same time, she has the depth to show weakness and to show desperation and to go to that place. And as you've seen the film, in a few moments, she really needs to go there. So I couldn't have just one thing. It had to be an actress that had both. And Abby has that in spades. Like she can do that. And one thing that I remember getting the call from Abbie saying, "Yeah, man, let's do it." And it was such a nice moment. And working with her, very few times I've worked with an actress that works as hard as she does. You know, like we would talk daily, like for the month leading to the production. When we got the location, because we built the entire set on a warehouse, she got a room and she had the script on the wall, and she would go and do, like, she works nonstop. And it's a pleasure, and it was really nice to work with her and to create this film and this character with her. Abbie is a brilliant actress. She really is.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. And then you've got Laz Alonso, and he plays the role of Detective Avery. Throughout the movie, man, the character just makes these decisions in these kind of like does things in the movie that just makes him real kind of like despicable character. Like people kind of root against him, but at the same time, this you can kind of understand the desperation that the character's going through as well. Because he's there for an intention and things aren't going his way, just to say the least, throughout the movie. And you could tell the character's just cracking, you can't handle it. When you have someone like, Laz taking on a role like that, someone who has just great a physical intimidation to the character, but also is dealing with a definitely kind of like a psychotic kind of breakdown through the film as well. It's a nice kind of mix between on the outside is kind of like the facade of masculinity, but on the inside, man, that boy was crumbling. That guy was just crumbling like nothing before. What was it like having him in a role and having him deal with that kind of different aspects to a character, the two different extremes that the character kind of has throughout the movie.
So again, I think you pinpoint exactly what I wanted for that character when I started working with Jeremy, and also that tracks back a little bit about what you were saying about the 90s, which is characters that they might do despicable things, but you understand their reasoning. They're not just doing things that are for no reason, just because they want to be rich or this. No, there are reasonings behind it. And I've always felt like that helps audiences connect with the characters. And working with Laz is physically very imposing. He's a big guy and he has that,
Mm.
but he's a very nuanced actor. And I think now with the boys and the projects that he's getting now, he's really getting to show them more and more, which is really nice to see, because he's such like, people don't really think about it, but he's like very trained, and he studied this for a long time, and he can bring certain nuances to scenes that are really nice. And working with him again with Abbie, they kind of paired perfectly, because they're both very strong actors, but it can show another side. And at moments, I remember like talking to Laz, and him and Abbie, they both came up with such beautiful moments when it's the two of them facing each other. And, like at different moments in the film, when they're facing each other, they each know different things, right? So it's always, every time they're together, sort of a little piece of the puzzle. And it's really nice to see how the two of them were able to make their character arcs work. So yeah, it was also a pleasure working with him again. Brilliant actor.
When you have a script like yours that is very specific in its character motivations, in a way that everything has to be structured and everything has to be played out, is rehearsal something that needs to be done to get that from the actors to get everything right? Do you have time beforehand for your actors to kind of get together and work on the stuff? Because in a certain way, because of its one setting and the way that everything plays out, it almost kind of feels like in certain circumstances, almost like stage play in a certain way. And when I think of theater, I think of like I'm sure that they have like a rehearsal process. I was just wondering if the same thing is that happens with your movie.
So, especially, I think this film, especially because we were in one location, there's a film that I love called The Sacrifice, which,
Hmm.
there are a lot of moments where they're in one location and the characters move and move around, and the camera doesn't necessarily have to be moving with them. And because we were shooting in one location, I mean, we shot in 20 days, but it was 10-hour days. So it's kind of like 17 days, and it's an indie. So we did have a couple of days of rehearsal. And for me, the important thing on a film like that is how the actors are going to move within the environment. Because, because Laz and all the other characters, I wanted the audience to be engaged and believe that they've been there many times, and it's that thing of like when you're filming someone at their house, an actor at their house, you have to get that actor there doing things all the time, because when you walk into your house, you know the place. You don't need to look around. You toss things at certain places because you know the environment. I wanted to create that with Laz a little bit. And I wanted to have a sort of a dance between him, Moon, Justin, all the characters. And I wanted Abbie to purposefully not know what they were doing. So she's kind of lost. So, so when the characters are moving around her, she's trying to figure out as the character is trying to figure out what's happening.
When it comes to creating tension in a movie, when do you think the seeds of that starts to really blossom? Is it done in the script? Is it done during performance, or is it done during editing? How important is the edit to make sure that those moments of tension you want to hit in the movie really do kind of pop through the screen? I'm really curious about that.
So that's a great question. Is like, especially on a film like Detained, is when you're writing it, you create those beats and those moments, right? But then when you're shooting, the pressure of time and what the actors are doing, that changes a little bit. In the editing, really is when you make them. So what I find is that when I'm shooting, I like to give breathing room within moments, because I can always play with the time, right, in the editing, because those tense moments always come when the audience knows a little bit more than the character. It's kind of like on a horror film, where when the
Mm.
audience knows that something's around the corner, that's when you get nervous, because something's going to happen to the character, and that character doesn't know it yet, right? So it's a little bit of that. It's planting the seed of something might happen and just extending as far as you can, and then the release of that tension. So I think all three stages you create that, but it is in the editing room where you really make it work.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere. Shout out to editor Mark Sadaka for his great work in the movie, by the way. He did a really great job there. I want to ask, I was saying to you off air before we started that, this movie kind of like just played me like a fine-tuned instrument, man. It was just taking me to all the places it needed to go. Um, as a film fan, that I know you are, Felipe, what was the first time you remember watching a movie where that had an effect on you? That you found yourself being just swayed from one moment to the other until, a twist or or a character development really just caught you off guard. What was the first time you remember that ever happened to you when watching a film?
So I grew up in a film of filmmakers. My parents are both filmmakers. My brother is also a filmmaker. So I have very clear that memory is very clear for me. It was the French film Amélie Poulain.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw it in theaters and I saw what could be done. It's just all the tools of a director, and how, as a storyteller, that person can sort of make you feel different things, and you can make you be surprised and interested and make you laugh and make you cry. Amélie Poulain really is the film that made me want to be a filmmaker. And then obviously you start seeing some films where you're like, oh my God, is that possible? Can we really do that? And I mean, we were talking about it before, but like Heat is absolutely one of them. I had
Mm.
the pleasure of studying under one of the producers of Heat, and I would ask him questions constantly, because it's such a film. It's brilliant. It works in every level. But yeah, I think in terms of the film that really had a really big impression on me, it would definitely be Amélie Poulain.
Well, something I talk about in my reviews all the time, and I don't care if I'm talking about a small indie or a big budget, whatever, is that you need to have the stakes at play in a movie. You need to invest in something, and I think something that's happened. I don't know whether it's because we have such a overflow of movies right now in all different aspects, and maybe it's more quantity over quality, but it seems like a lot of films these days don't bring the stakes to the table. And it's something that Detained does really well. Even though some of these characters can be unscrupulous, and even though some of these characters can be despicable in their actions or or what have you, the stakes are there for us to buy into. Everyone's got their own little thing at play. How important for you is to make sure that when you put in the processes together of a movie like Detained, that you make sure those stakes are there for people to invest in, and that those stakes are there for us to really just just hook into so make sure that when we do get swayed from one end to the other, we're really in it with these people on screen.
I think that's crucial, like especially nowadays where we see films and look, they have their place and they serve their purpose. But we have too many films where the world is always a peril and the world is
Mm,
about to end and the world is, you know what I mean? And I think you can make that work. But what I think I like about indies and films that are more personal and that take more into a character, they take closer attention to what the character is doing, not just the plot. I think
mm,
you can make film where if not only feels more personal, but the audience connects more with the character, right? Because they see that character going through something. To say to someone the world's gonna end, you gotta do this, that's one thing. But if you say your mother died and now you're dealing with this, that's a completely different take on a character. So we try to do that. We try to make it as personal as possible and as specific as possible. I didn't want the world to be in danger. I didn't want this town to be no, it's she is, you know?
mm,
And I think indies do that, but bigger budget films tend to have a little more trouble because I think you're trying to hit a wide net into an audience, right? So, but I do think specificity, it's a weird little dichotomy, but the more specific is your film, the more it connects to a broader audience, because as people, like we all understand when someone's going through something.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah,
Well said. And that's why I love Detained so much, because it is the little things in a movie that kind of like just create a big kind of like thing at the end, that and you just we know I love watching a movie like Detained is that I love thinking afterwards and stepping back and thinking to myself, which part did it get me? You know what I mean? Like when it is kind of get swapped, because there's one thing where you can work with genre conventions, but if the characters aren't there and they don't have the stakes at play and you're not buying into it, then you can have the most well-performed, well-crafted a movie in the world, but if it doesn't kind of draw you in like Detain does, then it's not going to work. And I just think, Felipe, that you and your cast and crew just did a fantastic job in getting that done. It's really is just a great kind of like crime mystery movie that sucks you in. And for everyone out there listening, August 2, it's playing select theaters and video on demand. And I encourage everyone, if you see it at a theater, watch it in the theater, because it's right, Felipe, we need people watching, indies in the cinemas, don't we?
absolutely. It's so important to keep filmmaking going and different perspectives, right? I mean, we've got to keep those films on the big screen and the audiences going for sure.
Absolutely. And for everyone, remember August 2, watch Detained when it comes out. If you guys really like to watch a great crime mystery, really sucks you in and doesn't let go until kind of like those final credits come up, then I really recommend people check this film out. And Felipe Mucci, I thank you so very much for your time today. Congratulations again with the movie, man. It's a really great job here. And yeah, I hope they see your next one very soon, because it's been a pleasure to talk to you. And when that happens, I hope we can talk again.
Absolutely, Matt. Thank you for having me and watching the film, and it was great talking to you about it.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.